Good morning, all. Welcome to the last day of a very exciting session, last 3 days of sessions. A lot of insightful comments and views from the service providers we've had. And I'd like to kind of change the gear slightly and give you a vendor perspective on how we see this evolving, the RAN infrastructure evolving. And as we have spoken to several service providers all across the world, both large and small, we've found that things that are really pressing in their mind are not how to run the existing network, how to lower the cost on that, but how are they going to deal with all the pressures that are going to be rising as they evolve to the next generation RAN network. So, but a quick word about Tejas. We are about a 25-year-old company, publicly listed about 7, 8 years ago, acquired by Tata about a few years after. And a lot of you have polled earlier know Tata, but those who don't, it's a 160-year-old company, $170 billion annual business amongst different opcos. And within US, there are some brands that you may already recognize, which are very prevalent. And about the 16 opcos represented by about 50,000 employees. Tejas itself is in wireline and wireless products. And we are basically band agnostic radio company. And I'll talk a comment about that in a little bit more. And we have established certified trusted supply chain. This is not a typo. NetworkX, May 2025. We were here last year. We pretty much introduced the company to the ecosystem in the US at that time. And just a quick recap on those who were not here last year and maybe you don't remember. But we were commissioned to build 100,000 sites of macro radios across all of India. And we had 18 months to deliver that, which we did. And along the way, we built several radios and established a trusted supply chain, capacity of about 50,000 macro radios per month, and left with a few lingering questions, like, is there really room for another radio player in this market? Will ORAN really take hold? What will happen on this end? So maybe we'll have answers to a few of them. Some will stay open questions, but I want to at least address a few of them. So essentially, I want to give you a quick glimpse on how that 100,000 site deployment played out for us, and talk a little bit about how we continue to grow our radio portfolio, and the all-important question about ORAN and what we did on that, and how we kind of anticipate going forward. So I'll say the 100,000 site deployment was very exhilarating, to say the least, and it was really driven. The fact that we were able to execute this in 18 months after building the radios from scratch was really because we had all the R&D engineers manufacturing everything under one roof. And we did as much as we could internally and partner with the stack vendors, whether it's for layer 1 or L2, whatever it was. We kind of put together a very efficient manufacturing system and supply these radios at this crazy rate of 50,000 radios every month. And then, did we succeed in deploying the network? And I have to admit, we had a lot of challenges in the beginning, meeting all the KPIs. It wasn't like a cakewalk by any means. And you can see why this was kind of happening. This is 100,000 sites are spread across all over India. Some were mountainous ravines, deep forests and deserts and everything. And we, after like several months or weeks of struggle to figure out where the things are going wrong, we realized a lot of it had to do with the transport network. It wasn't in the radios, it wasn't the RAN, it was on the back end. Why this is happening? We were experiencing, without knowing, sometimes like double, triple faults. The power supply was failing, the fiber was being cut, and everything in the middle you can imagine. But the net of it was we were able to deliver a network that was the lowest TCO to our customer, and all the key performance metrics were met. And I think the biggest measure of success was not what we accomplished, what the revenue we got or what we were able to do with the business we had, but really looking at the metrics of a customer itself. So this customer who had originally been doing okay, not great, but eventually was able to report significant growth in their revenue as well as their profit margin. The revenue increased about 20% CAGR over this 2-year period that they were measuring this, and then the profitability by over 100%. So one quick comment I want to make is about the radio design approach that we took, which enabled us to get there so fast. So our radio approach is not build a custom radio for every band. It's more of a Lego approach where we kind of break down at logical portions, this level of abstraction between the filters and the layer one and all the different components, the digital component. And we are able to mix and match and put together a new radio very quickly. And couple that with the fact that we are able to, this approach allows us to lower the supply chain issue risks by whether it's cost increases or lead times and all, and put all the manufacturing principles all into one under one umbrella. Really effectively makes it very efficient for us to put out new radios. Now, here is some examples of radios we have built. These are not comprehensive, but you can see all the way from 600 megahertz to C-band, everything is there. Whenever you see B, if there's applicable, think N as well, because we have both 4G, 5G radios. I didn't want to clutter the chart, but you can see the entire frequency band is covered. And going forward, we are beginning to look at some of the other 6G bands as well. The work has started on that, and millimeter wave as well. We all have kind of collectively come to a conclusion that mobility is not the friend of millimeter wave, but FWA is. And we are looking at very exciting projects, not just for FWA, but converging wireless and wireline as well. Some interesting products are in works from that as well. So O-RAN, of course, we believe in it, and for the rest, a couple of charts, you'll see how passionate I am about it. And we've done several tests across the world. We're in Southeast Asia, we've done in Europe, and US. But the most exciting one was we just concluded about 4 weeks ago. It was a model in which we took our radios from our factory, shipped it to this relatively remote place in South America, and our CUDU partner did the same thing with their product, and it showed up in the customs on pretty much the same date. Our customer was able to go there, clear it out, get the radios mounted on the towers, hook up all the wires, fibers, everything, and do the core integration and get the traffic up and running in less than 4 days. So, and this is where the riggers and all had no training. They'd never seen our radios, never seen our packaging, nothing. So quite an eventful 4 days we had there. And all the requirements were met, all the KPIs were met that were expected. The trial is going on right now, to the next level, but the initial objectives are all met. Now, there were challenges for sure, but nothing that we've not kind of seen before. And there were some timing issues and beamforming and all. But the point I like to make is every time we do this trial, the next one gets that much easier. So it's just something that we continue to learn. And now I know there's people talking about AI RAN and stuff, and applying that to all these integration efforts, and that's just going to make it easier and easier as we go forward. So I really believe with the right partner, we can actually get there. It is possible to do this thing, and I don't think O-RAN is an experiment anymore. It's something that's there for us to use and leverage. Yeah, this chart. So I could speak for maybe the next 3 hours on this chart, but I have only 5 minutes. So this is something we feel is very important for our industry to pay a lot of attention to, on all the features that are coming up in 5G and 6G, 5G advanced and 6G. I'm going to put everything there at the same time, and then there's a couple of things I want to talk about here, which are very important here. I think we talked about all these features that you can see here in this list here, and I don't think everything's going to show up in the RAN network day one. Every customer, every service provider has their different network, different topologies, different priorities, different financial models. So they will adopt these and adapt them to their networks in different ways. So it is very important to give them the tools to be able to do that. If we rush them and say, look, you have to accept all of them and employ all of them at the same time, and then give the keys to the vendor like us, and say, look, you go and do this and give me the best TCO on this network, I don't think it's going to work. I think the Open RAN is a platform that allows them to use their LLM models of choice, their tools of choice, and also prioritize which features they want to have their AI, agentic, or otherwise manage that network for them to lower the TCO there. And instead of going through other items here, I want to point out something else. That one thing I've not heard discussed a lot in the last couple 3 days, and I think it behooves us to pay a lot of attention to that. If you think about like a 2G to 3G to 4G, all these Gs, incrementing by one, who's made most money on all these beautiful networks? It's not the vendor community. It's not even the service providers. It's the guys who are using the network. It's the OTT folks. It's the guys who are writing apps. It's the guys who are driving, making devices. So, whenever we launch a new, speed test or something happens, some guy comes up with like a beautiful application and make a lot of money. So, okay, maybe we are used to it, and it's just like we are glutton for punishment, and we just accept it. But now something very transformative is happening with AI coming in now. One thing we've talked about is all the workload that's going to be thrown on these networks now. So just imagine the amount of, and I'll say, this is not like a RAN issue only. The wireline folks have suffered the same way. It's the race to the bottom for all the vendors. And when you look at the consumers, even service providers are a vendor in some sense. So I think we need to now figure out, we have the tools. We have DPI, deep packet inspection tools. We can create class of service. We can create quality of service. And I think it's time for us to make sure that we put enough tools in the next generation architecture, and we leverage enough tools in there so that when someone wants to throw in like insane amount of workload through our networks, they have to pay their fair share of the toll. Someone was talking about yesterday, like a robo-taxi uploads 30 gig of data every day. So, who's going to pay for that? If there's no monetization for service providers and all, it's just not a good story for us, long term. So, and there's various other things, football games and all these things are being telecast. The deals that you see happening, Warner Brothers, and all, people are talking of 70, 80, $100 billion mergers and acquisitions, something which is like unheard of in our world. But we are the ones which are enabling it. So I think it's very important that we kind of step back and say, look, let's not lose the sight of how we use these networks to get our share of the dollar here. And then I think, I'll return the time back to the organizers here. In closing, I think, having a low TCO enabler absolutely is necessary for these networks to make money for everyone in the food chain. And I say band agnostic radio turn. It's very important. It sounds like a very boring problem, but it is real. People who build these devices, for them it's a real issue, and they all have to make money. Every chain in the ecosystem has to make money. So coming out with bands very quickly is very important, whether it's millimeter wave or even beyond that. ORAN is here. It is for those willing to embark on the journey. We've learned a lot. And I know there's more learning to do, but the AI tools and all just make it so much easier now. So it's there for those who are willing to adopt it. And then, I think this is the most important thing in my mind now is that we really need to figure out how to leverage ORAN and the 5G advanced and 6G features that are coming our way to really monetize and extract more value from our networks. Thank you.